Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're taking a fascinating journey way up north in Japan to the island of Hokkaido.
Yeah, and we're talking wine, maybe not the first place you think of for Japanese wine, right?
Exactly. Forget maybe what you thought you knew. We've got some really interesting material here that paints a picture of a unique and honestly fast-growing wine scene.
hmm
So our mission today, really dig into what makes Hokkaido tick for wine production. What's its, special potential.
That's right. I mean, places like Yamanashi, down on the main island, Honshu, they've got the longer history, sure.
Yeah.
But Hokkaido, it's newer, but it's becoming really vital.
How so?
Well, it's adding this whole different dimension, focusing specifically on grapes that actually like the cold, cool climate varieties.
Okay, let's unpack that because the
Yeah,
climate, it is cool. You've got these properly cold, snowy winters, short, kind of mild summers.
but crucially, you also get these big temperature swings between day and night during the growing season. That's huge for the grapes.
Okay. And the ground itself, the soil.
Oh, it's varied, really varied, often volcanic in origin, which, has a big impact on things like aroma and that crucial acidity in the wine.
And it's not just the usual suspects grape-wise, right? They're using some different stuff.
Exactly. They're not just trying to force, say, Cabernet to grow. They're using these really tough, cold, hardy hybrid grapes, alongside, yes, some Vitis vinifera, the classic European wine grapes, but ones carefully chosen because they can actually handle the chill.
Right. So what kind of wines does all this unique mix actually lead to?
Well, the focus tends to be on really fresh, vibrant white wines, also some elegant sparkling wines. And for reds, think lighter-bodied fruity styles.
Sounds appealing. Are there downsides? Challenging?
Absolutely. The climate itself is a constant challenge,
Yeah.
and building recognition takes time, getting the word out. But the opportunities, they're pretty significant.
Like what?
Growing interest within Japan, for one. Plus, wine tourism is a beautiful place. And then there's that unique, cool climate style itself. It really stands out.
Okay, so backing up a bit, how did this even start? Growing wine grapes in such a, well, seemingly tough environment.
It actually goes back quite a way to the late 19th century. It was part of the Meiji government's big push to modernize agriculture in Japan.
Ah, okay. So they tried planting groups back then.
They did. They experimented with American varieties,
Yeah.
European varieties, but honestly, a lot of them just couldn't cope.
Too cold, too wet.
Yeah, the harsh winters, the summer humidity, which brought fungal diseases.
Mhm.
It was tough going for many classic grapes.
Right, not ideal conditions for your average Merlot or Chardonnay back then. So what worked?
Well, this is where the American grapes and, crucially, the hybrid varieties really showed their worth. They were just naturally more resistant to the cold, the damp, the local diseases.
Hybrids, like,
You saw things like Niagara, Campbell Early being planted early on, mostly for, simpler wines, juice, that sort of thing initially.
okay, so when did they start thinking more about quality, about making the kind of wines we're interested in today?
That shift really started picking up steam around the mid-20th century. You had these real pioneers stepping up.
Visionaries?
You could say that. People with maybe international training or just a really strong research focus. They started figuring out the best spots for vineyards, adapting techniques specifically for Hokkaido's cool climate.
Ah, so a more targeted approach.
Exactly. And slowly, the focus shifted from just quantity, just table wine, towards a real pursuit of quality. Better vineyard work, better winemaking, marketing, getting noticed in competitions.
And that built the reputation.
Yeah, gradually.
Yeah.
Especially for those crisp whites, the sparkling wines, and the lighter, more delicate reds. It was a process of continuous improvement.
Okay, this cool climate thing keeps coming up. Let's really get into the nitty-gritty of the terroir in Hokkaido. What does that climate really mean on the ground?
All right, the terroir is everything here. That dominant cool climate is the big story, driven by those long, cold winters, lots of snow.
Is the snow good or bad?
Both, actually. It can act like insulation, protecting the base of the vines from the absolute worst cold. But, you have to manage it come spring.
A double-edged sword, then.
Pretty much. And then you've got a relatively short growing season, maybe May to October, roughly.
Which means risks.
Yeah, risks of late spring frosts hitting the new buds and early autumn frosts damaging the grapes just as they're trying to ripen. Summers are generally mild, though.
Okay. But you mentioned that day-night temperature swing earlier.
Yes,
That's key.
that significant difference between daytime warmth and nighttime cool during the growing season. It's actually a huge plus. It helps the grapes hang on to their acidity while developing complex flavors and aromas.
Interesting. So how do the growers actually manage all this somewhat tricky weather pattern?
It's a really thoughtful approach. Site selection is number one. Finding slopes with the best sun exposure is critical for ripening.
Makes sense. What else?
Choosing the right grapes, obviously.
Mm.
Varieties that are naturally cold hardy or that ripen early.
Mm.
And then there's winter vine burial.
Wait, they actually buried the vines.
Yes, literally bend the vines down and
Yeah.
cover them with soil over the winter. It's essential protection in many areas.
Wow. That sounds like a ton of work.
It is. It really shows their dedication. And sometimes, in frost-prone spots, they might even use sprinkler systems for active frost protection. Crease a layer of ice.
Incredible adaptation. Okay, what about the soils? You mentioned volcanic earlier.
Yeah, volcanic soils, andisols, are pretty common. Dark, mineral-rich, and crucially, they drain really well.
Good drainage must be important with snow and rain.
Vital. But you also find clay soils, vertisols, argisols. They hold water and nutrients better, can give rinds more body, more texture.
Okay. Any others?
Sure. Sandy soils, too. Neosols, spodisols. Superb drainage there, but less fertile naturally. And stony soils, lithosols, cambosols. Again, good drainage. And the stones can hold heat, which helps ripen the grapes.
So all these different soils must leave their mark on the wine, right?
Absolutely. Like I said, drainage is key. But managing fertility is also important. You don't want the vines getting too leafy. You want them focused on the fruit.
And the flavors. Can you taste the soil type?
You often can, yeah. Those volcanic soils. You might get this distinct minerality, especially in whites like Kerner or Chardonnay, maybe a little flinty or saline note.
Yeah.
Quite different from warmer regions.
And the glaze.
Clay can give more weight, more structure to both whites and reds. Sandy soils might lead to lighter, more delicate aromatics. Stony soils can help with concentration.
So it's this complex mix.
Exactly. Soil type, grape variety, the specific microclimate of that vineyard spot, plus what the winemaker does. It all comes together in the final wine.
What about the shape of the land? The topography? Hokkaido's pretty mountainous, isn't it?
It is. Mountains, hills, plains, coasts. It's varied. And that matters a lot for vineyards. They're often planted on slopes or higher up.
Why slopes?
Better sunlight exposure, for one. Critical in a cool place. Plus, natural drainage water runs downhill, and it can offer some protection from frost settling in low spots.
Does it matter which way the slope faces?
Oh, definitely. South facing, southeast, southwest. Those get the most sun at this latitude. Winemakers think about morning sun versus afternoon sun, even how the wind hits the vines.
Are there distinct wine regions within Hokkaido yet? Like sub-appellations?
Not formally, not yet, but you're definitely seeing informal areas emerge with their own character. Like Yoji is getting known for Pinot Noir and sparkling. Sorachi is more diverse. Tokachi often has more hybrids, even some dessert wines.
So that terroir diversity is starting to show through.
It really is. Reflects the different conditions across the island.
Okay, this gives a fantastic picture of the environment. Now, the grapes themselves, what's actually thriving up there, given all this?
Well, because of that cool climate, those hybrid and cold-adapted varieties are really the foundation.
Right, hybrids. Just remind us quickly what that means for grapes.
Sure. Basically, it's a grape created by cross-pollinating two different grape species. Often it's the classic wine grape, Vitis vinifera, crossed with another Vitis species that might be tougher, more resistant to cold or disease.
Like breeding for specific traits.
Exactly. Combining the best of both worlds. And in Hokkaido, that's been key. Take Yamasachi.
Yamasachi.
It has a local hybrid, a cross between Cybele 13053 and Yamazaki. It's incredibly cold resistant, makes these deep-colored reds with great acidity and really complex aromas. Dark fruits, herbs, spice, earthiness.
Sounds intriguing.
Then you think it could be Hokkaido's signature red. Then there's Kerner.
Kerner. That's German, isn't it?
It is, yeah. The Vitis vinifera, actually a cross of Trollinger and Riesling. But adapts really well to the cold, ripens fairly early, makes these lovely aromatic whites. Fresh acidity, white fruits, citrus, sometimes floral or mineral notes. It's a key white grape there.
Okay. Any others?
Bacchus is another important one. Also German, a hybrid cross involving Sylvaner, Riesling, and Müller-Thurgau. Ripens early, aromatic whites again, think elderflower, acacia, peach, apricot, moderate acidity. Pretty versatile, works for dry or slightly off-dry styles.
So definitely embracing grapes that might not be household names everywhere.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You might still see some older plantings of things like Niagara or Campbell early, but they're less common now as the focus shifts to higher quality.
Yeah.
And what's really exciting is the work with newer PIWI variety.
PIWI.
Yeah, catchy name, right? Stands for fungus-resistant grapes in German. Think of Solaris, an early ripening white PIWI grape. Great disease resistance, really promising for sustainable farming in Hokkaido's future.
Okay, but what about the big names, the classic Vitis vinifera everyone knows? Are they trying things like Pinot Noir, Chardonnay?
They are, yeah, but it's definitely a challenge. If Pinot Noir shows promise, especially in Yoichi, where the sea has a bit of a moderating effect. You can get these delicate, lighter-bodied reds, earthy notes, good acidity, but it's tough to get it right consistently. Very vintage-dependent. Chardonnay is grown too, usually in more sheltered spots. It gets this really marked acidity, crisp apple and citrus flavors, sometimes that minerality. Used for still wines and also really important for their sparkling wines.
And Riesling. Seems like a natural fit for cool climate, but
Riesling is maybe the trickiest. It ripens late,
Mhm.
which is risky with those early autumn frosts, so you only find it in very specific protected sites. In good years, it can be great bright acidity, delicate aromas, but it's limited.
any purely Japanese grapes like Koshu from Yamanashi?
Not really much Koshu in Hokkaido. It ripens later, and it can struggle with the cool, sometimes damp conditions up there. Yamasachi is really the key regional red variety that feels uniquely Hokkaido.
So the future trend seems to be,
Mm,
what, doubling down on these proven performers?
Pretty much. Consolidating on those reliable, cold-hardy hybrids and the vinifera that work well, like Kerner and Chardonnay. Plus, refining techniques all the time and definitely keeping an eye on those PIWI grapes for sustainability and quality.
Fascinating choices. So how do they actually manage these vineyards day to day, given the cold and the short season?
Yeah, the vineyard management is highly specialized.
Yeah.
Pruning and how they train the vines, that's super critical.
Why?
To control how vigorous the vine is and really focus its energy on ripening the grapes properly in that limited time. Pruning happens late winter or early spring, and they often use high training systems like Gyo.
Hi, to get more sun.
Sun exposure, yes, but also airflow helps prevent disease.
We talked about burying the vines, which is wild. Any other cold coping strategies?
Well, beyond choosing the right site in the burial, dealing with frost spring and autumn is constant. We mentioned sprinklers sometimes. Disease and pest control is another big focus.
How do they handle that, especially with humidity?
Prevention is key.
Yeah.
Using resistant varieties helps a lot. Then it's about really careful monitoring and using minimal targeted treatments if absolutely needed. Lots of focus on organic options because of that humidity risk. Integrated pest management is common.
And just getting the grapes ripe must be a nail-biting finish to the season.
It really can be. They use techniques like canopy management, removing leaves strategically to get more sun and air onto the grape bunches. And picking time is absolutely crucial.
How do they decide when to pick?
It's a balance. Sugar levels, yes, but also acidity and, crucially, phenolic ripeness. That's the flavors, the tannins, the color compounds developing properly. And because quality is the goal, they often harvest by hand. Lets them be really selective.
Hand harvesting adds to the cost, I imagine.
It does. But there's also this growing commitment to sustainability. More organic, biodynamic practices. Using resistant grapes cuts down on spraying. It's partly environmental awareness, partly wanting that pure terroir expression.
Okay, so they've got these hard-won, carefully ripened grapes. What happens in the winery? How do they turn them into these distinct Hokkaido wines?
The winemaking often uses techniques specifically chosen for these cool climate grapes. For whites, think temperature-controlled stainless steel tanks for fermentation. They keep it cool maybe 14 to 18 Celsius.
Why is so...
To preserve all those delicate aromas that are characteristic of grapes like Kerner or Bacchus. For reds, maybe a bit warmer, 20 to 25 C to help extract color and tannin. Oak is used pretty carefully.
How so? Not big oaky wines, then.
Generally, no. They tend to use older barrels or barrels with less toast, less charring inside. The idea is to add a bit of complexity, maybe texture, but not overwhelm the fruit.
Makes sense. What about for the reds? Skin contact.
Maceration time on skins is often relatively short for reds, maybe 5 to 15 days, aiming for softer tannins. They might do a cold soak before fermentation starts, just to gently extract color and aroma.
And aging. Where do the wines sit before bottling?
Mostly stainless steel or neutral oak again. The goal is preserving freshness and purity. Malolactic fermentation, that's secondary fermentation that softens acidity. They often skip that for whites to keep them crisp. Maybe use it selectively for some reds.
So the overall philosophy sounds like less is more.
Yeah, often minimal intervention, letting the grapes and the place speak for themselves.
Okay, so what are the signature styles we end up seeing from Hokkaido?
Well, those fresh aromatic whites are definitely a highlight. Kerner, Bacchus, Solaris, pale bright acidity, lovely white fruit, citrus, floral, mineral notes. Great on their own, great with seafood, sushi.
Nice. And the reds?
Lighter, fruity reds, Yamasachi, Regent, maybe some Pinot Noir. Light to medium ruby color, soft tannins, lots of fresh red fruit, cherry, raspberry. Sometimes hints of herbs or earth. Often good, slightly chilled. Think poultry, pork, pasta.
Any rosé?
Yes, definitely some appealing rosés, often from Regent or Rondo. Short skin contact gives them that vibrant pink color. Intense fresh berry aromas, high acidity. Perfect summer sipping, good with salads, appetizers.
And you mentioned sparkling earlier.
Absolutely. Really elegant sparkling wines, often made using the traditional method, like champagne, usually from white grapes like Kerner or Solaris. Focuses on freshness, fine bubbles, delicate citrus, green apple, maybe a touch of yeastiness. Again, great aperitif, great with seafood.
Any sweet wines?
Yeah.
Dessert wines?
Less common, but yes. Sometimes late harvest wines or even ice wine. Ice wine, though, that's incredibly difficult to make there. Intense sweetness balanced by acidity, complex ripe fruit, honey notes, good with fruit desserts, maybe blue cheese.
So the winemaker's role seems really crucial here, understanding these unique grapes, adapting.
Totally. You need a deep understanding of cool climate fruit, how to enhance the acidity and aromas, how to manage tannins in the reds. It's all about aiming for that pure expression of terroir, often through a lot of careful experimentation and just meticulous work.
It sounds fantastic, but who's actually drinking these wines? What's the market like?
Well, the Japanese wine consumer is definitely getting more sophisticated, more interest in fine wine, generally both imported and domestic.
Yeah.
And there's this growing trend, sometimes called G-wine, appreciating local, regional products.
So people want to know the story, the origin.
Exactly. They're curious about how it's made, sustainability.
Yeah.
Hokkaido Wines have found this really receptive audience among informed, enthusiastic drinkers who like exploring regional stuff.
How do the wineries actually sell the wine? Where do you find it?
It's quite diverse. Direct sales at the winery are huge, especially with eno-tourism picking up. Specialty wine shops are important, smaller importers focusing on unique regions, restaurants, particularly those featuring local Hokkaido food. Online is growing too.
Not so much in big supermarkets then.
Less so. Often the focus is on slightly higher value, smaller production wines.
Okay, so looking ahead, what are the biggest opportunities for Hokkaido wine and what are the main challenges they still face?
Well, the growing demand in Japan for quality wine is a big plus. And that unique, cool climate style, the freshness, the purity, that's a real differentiator.
Anything else?
The positive image of Hokkaido itself, quality food, natural beauty, that helps. Export potential is there too, especially to other cool climate markets or people seeking PIWI rinds or sustainable options.
And the hurdles?
Scale is one. Often smaller production means higher prices. Production costs are generally higher too, that winter vine burial, the intensive vineyard work, and just building brand recognition nationally and internationally. Educating people about what makes these wines special.
You mentioned eno-tourism a few times. That sounds like a really good fit for Hokkaido.
Oh, it's a perfect fit. The scenery is stunning, a major draw for tourists anyway. Wineries are increasingly offering tours, tastings, restaurants, even places to stay.
Right.
And people are looking for those authentic, sustainable, rural experiences. Visiting a Hokkaido winery ticks all those boxes. Connect with the place, learn something unique, taste the results.
It sounds like a really solid foundation has been built. What about the bigger picture? Future challenges, overall outlook?
Climate change is definitely the big one long term. They'll need to keep adapting. We're talking temperature swings, changes in rainfall, maybe more extreme weather, frost, heat, heavy rain, typhoons.
So what can they do?
Keep refining site selection, adapt canopy management, water conservation, continue exploring resistant varieties and rootstocks. Lots of ongoing research needed to understand how the terroir is changing.
And how do they cement their place in the wine world? Build that identity.
Continue the relentless focus on quality, first and foremost. Then really communicate what makes them unique, the cool climate, the soils, the landscape. Promote those key grapes, Yamasachi, Kerner, Bacchus, Pinot Noir, the sparkling wines.
Get the word out more.
Exactly. Be present at wine events, smart marketing, maybe even develop more specific geographical subregions within Hokkaido eventually to highlight the nuances.
So innovation and research seem absolutely vital.
Nonstop. Research into even better cold and disease-resistant grapes, new hybrids, more PIWIs, optimizing vineyard techniques for the changing climate, refining winemaking to get the absolute best expression for these cool climate grapes. Collaboration is key, too. Producers working together, working with universities like Hokkaido University, maybe international experts, and investing in winery tech.
So overall, are you optimistic?
Very optimistic, actually. You can feel the passion from the producers. The potential of these adapted and PIWI grapes for sustainable quality is huge. Consumers are increasingly interested in local, authentic wines. The future looks bright, focused on quality, sustainability, terroir, and those great tourism experiences.
Could Hokkaido become a benchmark?
I think so. A reference point for cool climate wines, certainly in Asia, maybe globally,
Yeah.
known for quality, authenticity, sustainability, and just real elegance in the wines.
It's genuinely amazing to think this is all happening in a place maybe not on everyone's wine map. Can you name a few specific wineries that kind of exemplify this spirit?
Sure. Domaine Takahiko in Yoichi is really highly regarded, especially for Pinot Noir. Small production, high demand.
Okay.
Nikki Hill's winery in Nikki is bigger, more of a full destination with vineyards, restaurant, lodging. Yoichi Winery is a real pioneer in that area, long history. Furano Wine, connected to the town of Furano, also historical. Hokkaido Wine in Otoru is one of Japan's largest producers, works with growers across the island. Hakodate Wine down south focuses on wines for the Japanese palate. Hosui Winery is known for working in a really high snowfall area in Sorachi. Yamasachi Winery is another key player in Sorachi.
Lots happening there.
Yeah, and others too, like Chados Winery, Camel Farm, Takizawa, Tenor Winery, which actually provides facilities for others. Yoichi and Nikki really stand out as clusters. Great conditions for Pinot, Chardonnay, Kerner there.
Well, this has been just incredibly insightful, a real deep dive into Hokkaido wine. So to quickly recap the main points.
Yeah, it's this dynamic, emerging, cool climate region.
Yeah.
Relying on smart choices, hardy hybrids, well-selected vinifera.
Making these really fresh, aromatic whites, elegant sparklers, light, fruity reds, all reflecting that unique terroir.
Exactly. Challenges remain: climate, market recognition, but the potential for quality, for tourism, for a unique identity.
Yeah.
It's massive.
Absolutely. Our goal today was really to give you, the listener, a solid handle on what makes Hokkaido viticulture tick.
Hope we managed that.
And maybe sparked a few aha moments thinking about the sheer ingenuity involved in growing grapes in that kind of environment.
Right. The commitment is just incredible. That spirit of innovation against the odds.
So here's a thought to leave you with. As our climate continues to change, how will regions like Hokkaido, these cool climate frontiers, adapt further? What might they teach the rest of the wine world?
Good question. And what's the ultimate potential for Japanese wine overall on the world stage? Maybe beyond what we currently expect.
Something to ponder. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.